We move on now to Professor of Cybersecurity, Kevin Curran at Ulster University, of course, a professor there. Good morning to you, Kevin. Always a pleasure to have you on the programme. No, I don't have you on the programme because I didn't pick up the call. I'll start that again. Line 1. We welcome on to the programme Professor of Cybersecurity at Ulster University, Kevin Curran. Good morning to you, Kevin. Thanks for taking the call.
Good morning, Greg.
Right, you watched the programme on Facebook last night. My brief assessment, and then I'll look forward to yours, is that this is nothing I think most of us didn't know. I think we're somewhat complicit in it. And we had the usual reviews and training commitments from these big companies, but I don't anticipate anything changing at all because we're liking, sharing and clicking and all that kind of stuff. What's your take on the whole thing, Kevin?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, last year, the internal document outlining Facebook's in-house policy for handling content was leaked, their internal rules book. And, of course, it just really was an eye-opener. Like things that could be allowed, that photos of animal abuse can be shared with only extremely upsetting imagery to be marked as disturbing. Videos of abortion are allowed as long as there's no nudity. I mean, there was a complete list, and some of it really make your blood boil. And I've seen it. I've talked on this program, in the past, where there was a Facebook group in Letterkenny selling a second-hand marketplace on Facebook, and there was items up there that were put up there to provoke people, which were really disturbing. And one of them was a spina bifida, a doll, which was marked as a spina bifida doll, and it was all this drool coming out, porridge out of the mouth, and there was all these captions, and there was no one on earth who would have looked at that and said that wasn't offensive and disturbing. And I flagged it to Facebook, and they came back actually within a few hours, which was impressive, to say that they did not deem it as inappropriate. And I just thought, oh my God, that there is nothing clearer in my mind than something that was offensive, and yet they deemed it. So I'm glad that this has been exposed again, because, of course, I don't expect Facebook to locate everything, and because there's so many posts going up. But when something is brought to their attention, really, there should be no doubt about some of the material again, which was exposed last night. That really is offensive, disturbing, and breaks anyone's,
But if you're Facebook, Professor, if you're Facebook and someone says to you, there's a graphic abortion video on Facebook, take that off, and that is offensive to you, yet I put it up because I want people to see the reality of abortion. That's just a potential argument off in our example you gave. How do you moderate that in terms of allowing people the freedom of speech, probably a reasonable argue to confront people with the facts, versus I don't want to see that, I've got my own point of view and I find that offensive? Is that not the line that Facebook are trying to walk?
Yeah, it is difficult because, again, that even when it comes to the news aspect of fake news, again, that we don't really want Facebook to be judge and jury and to be, the sole proprietor. But what we would say is, tell us your rules. How did you create them? What experts have you worked with? For instance, if you're in suicide or all the areas, which social scientists have you worked with? Why can't experts in the areas also be involved? Why are you a closed group when it comes to this? In other words, work with society, work with us. Of course, add more content moderators. Just tell us what your rules are. Let us decide, the public, the people who are literally paying you. In other words, just be more transparent about it. And of course, we know that there will always be nothing, especially when it comes to politics, or just the example you've given exactly, that there can be, and they do that with certain suicide talks about it, that they claim that they leave it up because it brings up the issue. But again, at least I would like that they've worked with experts who know and deal and understand this area, and that it's just not them doing it. So therefore, that they can't be seen, and also it works in their advantage, because then we can't as easily take the cynical view to say that Facebook are leaving all these videos up because it generates views, it allows them to sell ads again. That
controversy creates cash as well. I mean, that's a reality, and that's the only. What do you think of a program like this, though, Kevin? In that, the new guy goes into an office, he's been trained up by someone who's, probably showing off a bit. They're giving their interpretation of guidelines. I don't know if everyone's pixeled out, and I just wonder if someone walked into any business and it was done in that fashion, they're getting the quality of the staff member really is the sole representation of Facebook to some extent. Are you comfortable with how the program was shot? And do you think it gives us actually a true picture? It's a controversial one, but would they have shown a good member of staff who said, I don't like this, or, that gave some proper critical analysis or confirmation of what the rules are?
Yeah, of course. They only showed us what they wanted. We don't know how long really the person was there. And I'm sure that the person spotted a lot of legitimate content being taken down. But of course, they just showed us the examples, of course, of the ones where the hate speech really, and the ones of and not beating a small boy. So again, that they were selective. And of course, old TV is they had an agenda. They put someone undercover. And they came back with, what their agenda was, that Facebook were really not moderating content properly, that they were leaving stuff up. But yet the examples that they've given us really, again, just should be examined closer. Facebook really have to be more accountable. And again, just tell us, how many content moderators have you got? What are they doing? What is the rules book? And again, work with external experts. Yeah,
if there is a rule book or if there is guidelines, you will set people equally, because those are the rules. Whereas if you have that kind of ambiguity and interpretation, then it leaves the vacuum for dispute and conversation and people's own interpretation. That's really, if they had strict guidelines, then everyone would be playing by the same rules.
Yeah, but they do have guidelines, and these guidelines are, the content moderators, that's a rule book.
Okay.
Again, and it was just leaked, so we know what they are. But again, who decided these guidelines?
Yeah, I get you. As it relates then to political conversation, Tommy Robinson became a focus of it. He's a controversial character, but he's a character that speaks to a lot of people. Donald Trump's a controversial character. He speaks to a lot of people, and there's very many people very upset with him. In terms of that sort of political conversation, what views are legitimate, that's also a tough line to walk, do you think? Or do you think it could be easier?
Yeah, that's difficult again, because they showed that Tommy Robinson, again, that, a leading far-right activist, again, that his page is actually, it goes through a process called shielded review. So therefore, in other words, that the moderators themselves can't delete a video from there that actually goes, that the external companies like CPL, who are based in Dublin, and that's the company that was exposed. CPL have been working with Facebook for about 8 years, actually, and that they're external contractors and that they moderate the content. But when it comes to someone like Tommy Robinson, again, if any videos of his are flagged by someone as being inappropriate, it's actually Facebook who actually are the only ones who can do anything about that. CPL, for instance, can't do that, and that he's given protected status just like any politician who's from, from the left or the right, really. That, again, and of course, that's it, because a lot of people find his comments and what he says and what he stands for extremely upsetting. But, of course, in this case, Facebook have, protected him and at least let a lot of the videos up, which upset some people. But, of course, they've deemed them that they are acceptable to talk about issues like immigration.
A lot of it's hate speech, though, then, isn't it? So it's complicated.
Yeah, a lot of it is what we would deem as hate speech. But again, that some of the videos they've deemed as saying no, that these issues, that he's allowed to talk about immigration, he's allowed to talk about hate crimes against Muslims. But again, other people. So what one person finds offensive, Facebook don't in this instance.
Yeah, and one of the damaging areas, which I don't think was touched on in the programme last night, is fake news, stories that are shared everywhere that a certain oil cured someone of terminal cancer, which could lead someone to sort of go down that road, to not go through the traditional methods of curing a disease that we know actually do work, but instead may rely on some made-up story that's been generated purely just for clicks and likes. I mean, I don't know if that... I watched most of it. I don't know if that was touched on in the programme last night, but that's also an area that really Facebook really need to get their act together on. Would you agree?
Oh, definitely. Fake news something really annoys me because, of course, I want the truth. I want the kids to learn everything. And then it's very hard for a young person, especially, to filter what is a crazy story and to what something that's got scientific evidence behind it. And it is very hard because, sometimes, again, how do young people know, like, to check the date of a story, to see the recirculate, to check the source, look closely at the website again. So it's also hard for Facebook as well. Now, they have hired fact checkers again to examine the most widely shared stories, and if they check it out, then they put an icon on there verifying that the story is authentic. But again, everything that they do, they were already accused when they were doing this earlier that they were censoring white right-wing stories in the United States again. So, again, sometimes they can't win when it comes to this. But, of course, really what you want to do, they've also tried to expand legitimate sources like the New York Times, for instance, give them cards with an image and a headline, and that they are trying to address it because they know that this is again, just like the political stories which were claimed to have helped Trump win election, that really they know they've got to do something about this. But it's not when you sit down and try to examine how do you filter what news is, it becomes very, very difficult, and it's difficult for algorithms to just do this by themselves. Of course, they do that because they can spot where stories are coming from if they're fake, depending on the source. But it is not that easy, and what they really had to do in the end was to hire teams of fact checkers.
Indeed. Always interesting. Thank you very much for coming on the programme. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome, Greg.
Okay, that is Professor of Cybersecurity at Ulster University, Kevin Curran. Professor Kevin Curran.
The 9 till noon show comes to you